of what to call the building.
Yeah. It's a
And
later
so
living community.
later living community.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's when we were joining the LPF, and I had a call with Ibra, who do our comms, put us in touch with Priya there, and she goes, "I've so wanted to have Auriens the care home as a member," and I went, "We're not a care home," and she's like, and then when she came around the building the other day, I was like, just have a look at this. It isn't a care home. It's very different to a care home, and that's the problem.
And in the UK, there's am I right in thinking there is plenty of care homes,
Yep.
but the later living is less is more of a new thing?
Yeah. So later living has grown, really had an explosion of what's called integrated retirement communities, which is the effectively independent living where people are able to age in place. And those
Say age in place.
age in place.
Age in
So you
place.
move in. So typical person who's going to move to Auriens or another scheme like Auriens is going to be mid to late 70s to early 80s, and some form of event is going to have happened at home. So there's a reason. It could be a loss of a loved one, impending loss of a loved one. They could have cancer. They could have be developing mobility issues, and their existing home, that's typically the family home they've lived in for 30, 40 years, is no longer fit for purpose. So they're using less and less rooms. And so they need to be able to move to somewhere where they can live independently, but have the peace of mind that there's care and support on tap, ready to draw down whenever they need it.
And we're obviously involved in those moments often.
Yeah.
We see that happening and become the sort of therapist.
You become very much a therapist, very much an agony aunt. In fact,
Yeah.
our sales team and the whole methodology of how we sell is based on being effectively an agony aunt. And for us, it's about understanding what is the real issue. So our methodology of selling is person-centered selling, and that is the same methodology that you would use for drug addicts. So if you turn to a drug addict and say to them, "You need to stop taking heroin," they're going to say no. And just ignore you. Whereas if you actually get an understanding of the root cause as to why they're taking the drugs or what's causing the issue, and you solve that, then they're going to be able to be open to moving or to stopping the drugs.
So you ask the questions of, you find out what the problems are and why they might have interacted with you in the first place, and you then try and solve those
exactly.
problems.
So every day we celebrate advances. We don't celebrate sales, because we do go through the advances and through the various stages of understanding why they need to move, what the problem is, and what the solution is. They will then move with us. And so a lady who in the US who was looking to move to a later living community, and she wouldn't move despite her children saying, "Mum, you need to move." And the sales counselor went to meet with her at her home. And after she built the trust, she said, "The reason that I'm not moving is that my two children are adopted and they don't actually know. And I don't know where their birth certificates are." And so Alex, with the lady's permission, went through her house and in her loft, found the birth certificates. And that lady then moved to the community because her secret was kept safe. So there was no end of, "Are you ready to move? Are you ready to move? Let's you thought about moving, you're going to make an offer." None of that was going to make that person move to the community. It was only once the problem that she had been solved would she then consider moving. And so that's the looking at what we don't know is what we're trying to do on a daily basis.
And is there any consistent theme, or it sounds like it can be very personal for each person?
It's very personal to every person, but you will often see kind of common themes where they have lost their their spouse. They may be thinking that they're going to be losing them soon, and it's a preemptive move, or there is an underlying health condition which is making them go, "My existing home is no longer fit for purpose." And so we often see those kind of common themes where people say the stairs are starting to become a little bit too much for me. I'm using, living in less and less rooms. I'm not going up to the top 2-3 floors of my house. I'm worried that I'm becoming a burden to my family. And I'm starting to get worried about the stress of repairing my house. And actually, I want to move somewhere where I can have peace of mind.
And do you often find that kids come to you?
Very much so. So we will see that often the children are making the initial inquiry, on behalf of their parents. Sometimes it's with the consent of their parents. Other times it is them being preemptive
Researching and
and researching. We actually have books for on how to talk to your parents, to your older parents, which we actually give to people, which actually helps them have the conversations with their parents about why now might be the time to make a change. Because often people are, or we would say, in denial. They don't know they need to make a change, and often we see people inquire. And then they go away for several months or several years until such time as they realize they need to make the move.
interesting.
And that is often with the children who are helping us with that decision making. You'll find often that the children will be coming to help choose an apartment. They will also be wanting to help with the process of how the move happens. They may be helping with negotiating the price. But then you'll have others where they are completely independent of their children, and they are the ones making the decision themselves and choosing the apartment. And so we just go with the,
You've got
whatever the
variety.
dynamic is in front of us.
Do you think your knowledge about this will impact, well, it must do, but impact how you lead your life moving, like the later years for you? And I don't know if your parents are still around, but how you communicate with family members?
Definitely. I would say, when I turn 65, which is typically the minimum age that you need to be from the sort of planning permission to move into a community like Auriens, at that age, I'll be looking at moving into a later living community. My other half might have different ideas, but I think that when you look at the mature markets like America, Australia, New Zealand, where this type of lifestyle and way of living is much more widely acknowledged and understood, people are moving in at a much younger age. So in the US, people are moving to Florida to, in their sort of late 50s into active aging communities, and then they're moving to retirement villages at a later date, and then
Interesting.
moving into care should they need that.
And
But
do you think that's how it will be? Do you think that's how it will evolve here over the years?
what we're seeing now is that the awareness of the product is growing. So 10 years ago, people were going to Battersea Place going, well, what is this?
Yeah.
Whereas now you're seeing people go, well, I know Riverstone, I've been to them, and I've been to Auriens, and I've been to Life Care, and I've been to Elysian, and actually their understanding is much greater. Then they're going, well, they think of the care homes. I don't need that because I'm a little bit younger. I don't need that level of care and support. Yeah. So that understanding of the product, of the benefits of having friends who live in a community like Auriens is really starting to become much more the norm compared to a few years ago.
Because I imagine people, I mean, our concern about calling people is we don't want to offend people by,
so
they shouldn't do.
They shouldn't do.
I'm not saying they should, but that's the concern.
So the concern you're flagging there is something that we always have heard over the years, and I've experienced with estate agents, and the perception of it being a difficult conversation to have, of course, I get. What's really interesting is the research that we had as part of our new creative direction and branding that we carried out last summer was really interesting, where we interviewed people who have, through our research agency, people who've moved to Auriens, people who are considering Auriens, and people who've looked at other later living communities. And it was fascinating that those who haven't made the decision feel almost like they're in a storm, like they're in a very rough sea, and they feel worried, anxious. They're stressed out by the fact that they haven't made a decision on what their future is. Whereas those who've moved to Auriens and other later living communities, they feel like they're really calm, almost like they've come into a little harbour and the water's suddenly calm after sailing through a storm. So the way that I would look at it is, actually, you are doing them a great service by making them aware of an option that they aren't necessarily aware of. And we see the majority of our leads that come to us are from word of mouth. So that is people who are recommending their friends to consider going to Auriens. Yeah. And that can be both from people who have said no to Auriens, people who are just aware of us, people who are friends of Auriens, so our club initiative, but also our residents. Our residents are our greatest advocates because they're the ones living it, and who are then saying to their friends, you need to move there. But often there is a misconception as to what we are as a sector. Are we a care home? Are we residential? What are we? We're independent living. People are buying or renting an apartment, and they are drawing down services as and when they need that, as they age in place. But what they've got right at the beginning is a range of amenity that they're able to enjoy, which is an extension of their home. And so for us, the way of getting those people who are recommended by their friends to come and see us is to come to events, is to come and be part of our community. We invite the curious to come through our door. And we always say to people, just, get them to the door and then come in, experience the service, experience the hospitality that we have. And often you'll see people who'll come to events who had no idea where they're coming, go, this is quite nice. Quite like this.
Very
Can I come and
nice.
have a look? Can I come and have a look? And that is the really good way that we just get the message out there, and people go, yeah, this is where I'd like to be.
You mentioned that people in the US have they move to Florida, and that progress starts in that way. And then, if you're living in London, you're interested in this way of life and this next move, then you need to pick yourself up from the friends and the shops that you're aware of, and move yourself to a completely new place.
Yeah.
Now, I've just done that because I've got kids and I needed more space, and we're looking for a school.
Yeah.
And I'm in my 30s. It's been super stressful.
Yeah.
Finding new friends, finding new commutes and new shops, and all of that stuff is really, it's a lot of upheaval.
Yeah.
But you're doing it for your kids, and there's you've got this purpose. And the amazing thing that I think that you've mentioned is that you remain within your community. And I having spoken to you a lot about this, the demographic of people is that people are from the area. They are from such close vicinity, and the concept that you can have no change in your community, but a better living experience is what, for me, is really exciting about the concept. And there are so few of them available in London, particularly at the quality of what you're showing.
Yeah.
And I know we've spoken a lot about community, and we've been in the community for going into our 47th year. We've grown up in the area. We know people. It's such an interesting, vibrant place. And coming to the event last week or the week before, it was great to see the locals popping in and out. And that's just that must be a really exciting moment to be one of the first that's offering that similar community.
You're absolutely right. People have historically moved out of London if they're looking for this type of community, and they're moving to new places. But actually what we're seeing, and the reason a lot of people choose to make Auriens their home, is because they've grown up in Chelsea, or they've lived in Chelsea for most of their life.
Yeah.
And this is where, all of their favorite amenity is. They want to go to Duke of York Square for coffee every morning because that's what they've always done. They want to go to Le Colombier to have lunch. They want to be able to pop to Peter Jones. And in fact, you talk to Neil, our chauffeur, about where the Range Rover goes, and it is to Colombier, it is the Lister, it is the Cromwell, it is Duke of York Square, Peter Jones, Colbert. So that staying within your local community is absolutely key. And the really nice thing is, and I remember last year looking at out the window of our sales office and seeing one of our residents walking arm in arm with one of our concierge going off to Waitrose. And so, that was a task that if she'd been living on her own would have been quite, stressful potentially, because she'd be having to do it on her own. But she was off there walking with Lucas, arm in arm, chatting about life, and just so happy. And what you find is that we're able to take care of the little tasks and provide that service that just makes life really straightforward.
That's little, plumbing, or hanging a picture, or finding some food, or batteries, or
precisely that. But actually, in this particular case, she was driving to see her son. She was driving along the Fulham Road, and her car broke down. She didn't phone the AA. She phoned Lucas.
Really?
She was out seeing her daughter out in Surrey, and her car started leaking. Again, doesn't phone the AA. She phones Lucas, and it's just that level of support that that they have that enables them to have really, really fulfilling lives. And what they love is that companionship. When they walk through the door, there's a friendly face. It's almost like Cheers, where everyone knows your name, and so people make a fuss of you as you come through the door. But equally, that goes to late at night when you're coming back from the theatre. You haven't got to worry about shutting the door as you walk through the door, and is someone going to follow you through, because there's concierge there 24 hours a day to look after you. I'm a resident coming back from holiday, and in fact, we've used this as the focus point of one of our new adverts. And I happened to be with the concierge team in the lobby, and I saw her limousine drive up outside, and out go two of the concierge. The boot pops open, they grab her bags onto the trolley straight up to her apartment. William, our general manager, comes out and says, good morning, how are you, and escorts her into the building, sits her down, they have a coffee together in the lobby. Her chauffeur comes in, has a quick sort of drink with the team, and then gets back in his car, and off he goes. And it was that warm welcome that she'd received.
Brilliant.
And she said it's so good to be home.
Yeah.
And she'd been off on a lovely holiday, for a couple of weeks, but coming home, just everything had been taken care of. And what that then leads to is things like the housekeeping team. So the housekeeping team had been into her apartment beforehand. They put fresh flowers in there. They'd stocked the fridge for her. The beds had been remade for her. So everything was ready to go. So that stress, or perceived stress that you have when you come home from holiday, it's like, are we going to have a leak? Is there going to be X, Y, and Z wrong? Pile of posts. Everything is there, curated for you, so that you can have that level of support. And then the point you made about people moving out of London. It's interesting. We've had people moving from overseas to be to Chelsea, and in fact, actually from the countryside. For Auriens, for some of them, where they're moving into an area where they don't know people, the team make them part of the community, and so they become just like they were a Chelseaite, and they've known everyone for 30, 40 years. They become part of that. And a big part of how that happens is the activities that we run and the events. It's one of the things that happens at the Cake and Concierge, is that they choose the films that are going to be shown that week in the cinema. And I remember that can get quite a lively debate as to what they're going to choose. I remember one resident saying to me that he'd been forced to watch Mamma Mia 2 by his partner and their friends, and he was just like, he's like, it was awful. He just wanted to watch the football, but they made him watch it, and but they had a load of fun around it, and it was a great sport over it.
I think that's great, because I think sometimes if you're on your own for a bit long, you end up getting very comfortable in your own company.
Yeah.
And sometimes a bit of friction with other people helps you. I don't know. It helps you manage life a bit better.
Yeah. The reason I'm in this sector, one of the reasons, is my own grandmother's experience. She lived in a tumble-down cottage in West Dorset to her literally almost to the end, and she just regressed from interacting with society, and the home was completely unsuitable for her needs. And she started to resent us as a family towards the end. And you think there's got to be a better solution.
And I think, I remember coming to look at some of your apartments and thinking, wow, if my granny had been here, to be able to drop my kids off to spend the night with her, or or to pop round for dinner. It's so easy.
Exactly that. And I think that one of the things that works really well is the in apartment dining. And we had a resident move in, and he had a friend and his friend's teenage sons come to for dinner, and they decided that they were going to eat out in the courtyard garden, and they were going to order Five Guys in. So I watched this Five Guys arrive to our concierge. They then brought down the bag in a very much decked out in their nice little concierge jackets and ties and what have you, and then watched our maitre d' from the restaurant basically then plating up Five Guys,
Really?
And getting little things of ketchup ready for them, the little pots of ketchup, and taking it out and like serving basically like silver service for Five Guys while they were out in the garden just having a great time.
I think we actually. I was thinking about this, but I was thinking that was a year or two ago, whether you could design something like this for young families, to put awesome like play areas for kids. As at the moment, for me, it's a different time of life, but you can't really go out. You've got kids. You're stuck at home a little bit.
Yeah.
Your house isn't fit really for kids.
Mhm.
They're drawing all over the walls. Your carpet's absolutely mess. They're
Yeah.
kicking footballs around in your kitchen.
Yeah.
And you're making new friends with your kids' parents. And the concept of living in an environment where you're all together, you're
Yeah.
going through the same thing,
Yeah.
you've got all the facilities,
Yeah.
and that you've got a built-in community with people who are going through the same stage of
Yeah.
life.
It genuinely is a magical place. And
Yeah.
I know that sounds incredibly cheesy, but I've never worked in a place which has a feeling of everyone pulling together.
Yeah.
Like the people that I'm lucky enough to call colleagues are so good. They care so much about our residents. And I think the majority of them come from five-star hotels, and they are used to providing exemplary service. But with a hotel, I often talk to them about this, you will see a transient community. People will come in for a night, they'll come in for a weekend, they may come in for a longer period of time. But the reality is they're going back home. And so you're not getting that ability to really get to know them and to build long-standing friendships and relationships with your clients, your guests in a hotel. And I see the way that they provide what the friendship, the agony, aunt, uncle role, the problem solving. We had a resident who had always wanted, his kids came out at Cake and Concierge. He'd always wanted to see Riverdance in Dublin live. It was on his bucket list. And so we arranged for 5 residents and plus team to fly to Dublin and to see Riverdance and go
Yeah.
backstage. And they had dinners at the finest restaurants in Dublin. It is the fact that the team have all had falls training. They've had first aid training. They are trained to spot signs of someone who has has dementia or early stage dementia. We have a system where we monitor the residents, so we just check off who we haven't seen during the day, so that if we haven't seen them, we're able to go and ring them up and, are you going to come and see the film, or would you like me to go and get you anything? That sort of protective cocoon that we put around the residents means we are able to help them thrive rather than survive, which is what so many older people do.
How do your colleagues, I mean, colleagues that have come from the Savoy and from, I mean, I think it's interesting because we've obviously spoken a lot about Auriens, and I know decent amount about it, but
Yeah.
it is still it's a fairly new concept.
Yeah.
And the thing that I'm taking away, and I'm so excited about hearing here, is it's, I suppose, from my perspective as someone in property, I know the second-hand model, that the homes that we know really well that buy and sell,
Yep.
that aren't really fit for purpose for potentially quite a lot of your residents. And then there are the new build schemes that have been really popular over the last 10, 15 years. And they've been brought here really from international buyers. But like you're talking about with hotels, they are quite transient.
Yes.
And the service is extraordinary. The finish is amazing. You're creating a home. It's a great feat, and I'm really proud that we've met and we're coming and being part of it as well. It's a really exciting.
Yeah,
journey to
we're
be part of.
delighted to be working with you all. And we hope that our reputation will be as strong in 45 years as it is for Russell Simpson today after 45
Oh,
years.
that's very kind.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming. It's been great to
Pleasure.
hear all of the tales and I think all the sort of examples, and you can hear from there's this excitement in your voice about it, and it's really nice to hear. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Bertie.